Hello and welcome to another episode of Autogefühl with me, AJ. Opel has had a very interesting past, especially in the recent years. It was owned by GM for a large number of years, even though it's a German brand, and recently it's been acquired by the PSA group, that is Peugeot, Citroën and DS. But all this shifting around hasn't been a deterrent. In fact, they recently launched the Crossland X, which I drove a few weeks ago, so make sure you check out that review as well. And here today we have an all-new car, and that's the Insignia Sports Tourer. What is it? Well, this is the estate version of the regular Insignia Grand Sport, which Brian drove a few weeks ago as well, so make sure you watch that video if you want to check out the normal sedan version of this car. So this car competes with the likes of the Ford Mondeo, the Volkswagen Passat and the Skoda Superb. They even say that this could even be a competitor to the likes of the BMW 3 Series. But to find out if that's true or not, I've come here to Hamburg. So are you interested? Let's find out. Come on, let's go. Let's take a look at the front. So the new Insignia also comes with the optional IntelliLux Matrix LED lights, like the ones we have in this car over here. And as we go further towards the center, the trademark Opel or Vauxhall grille, flanked by two wing-like chrome effect plastic, and thankfully a three-dimensional logo. No, none of that funny business flat logos anymore. We do have the camera for the front assist over here, and what seems to be perhaps where the adaptive cruise control sensor would be. Further down, the license plate, as well as a black colored lower part of the bumper over here. And towards the side we have fog lamps, again with a little bit of detailing with this chrome effect plastic. And up top on the hood, I think it's a very neat design. It's quite a long hood. This is a very large car, first of all. On the sides we have a very subtle design line which fades away towards the nose of the car. One kink down the middle of the bonnet. I think it kind of separates the two, the sides. It kind of breaks the monotony of such a large hood. And the same on the other side. Now let's shift our attention towards this car. This is the OPC line, or the more sporty variant, and this has the big 260 horsepower engine. We'll talk more about that later on. But where this car is a little bit different is, well, in the lower bumper we have this little notch which kind of gives it a little bit more aggressive look. And if you can see towards the side as well, the side part of the front bumper is a lot more larger, again to suggest that this is a more sporty iteration of the Insignia. The Insignia is about 4.9 meters long, that's about 16 feet. It's 1.9 meters wide, that's about 6 foot 2 inches. And it weighs about 1,700 kilograms. In fact, this new Insignia is longer than its predecessor by about 73 millimeters, and the entire wheelbase has been really stretched out to over 90 millimeters over the predecessor. What does that all mean? Well, the interior space that you get is much better than it was before. But on the other hand, because of the large wheelbase, it's a little bit tight and a little bit tricky to maneuver in tight city spaces, which we will find out later on. Anyway, as we look towards the side, the car that we have here has 18-inch rims, and as we go down the side, it's again very neat, very elegant. I think up to the B pillar, it's very similar to the Insignia Grand Sport, which is the sedan version, but where it changes is over here towards the C pillar, where you will notice that the roofline stays higher for longer, and that gives you the estate look. A large shoulder haunch to add a little bit of masculinity or masculinity, sorry. My English just left me there for a second. But apart from that, you will see that there is some chrome trim over the top of the windows, as well as on the roof. So what do you think about this design? Do you think it looks nice, or do you prefer the older one? Here on this other car, the more racy red car, we have 20-inch rims because this is the OPC line, the more sporty line. It also comes with the Brembo brake disc calipers up front and Continental Sport Contact 6 rubber. As you go further down the side, again, this is being the more sporty variant. The side skirts are a lot more aggressive, a lot more interesting, a lot more dynamic. And as we continue down the side, I think here the design is still very similar to the previous one that we saw. Same rims over here and a nicer, more accentuated chrome line over the top, as well as this. I think these chrome detailing looks really nice and stands out a lot more in pairing with this red color. At the top we have this spoiler, which I think makes it a little bit more interesting and a lot more sporty. I also like how there are these side triangular pieces as well, so it kind of envelops the entire side of the car. The rear window is also sloping, so it kind of gives it a coupe-like stance. I also like how these interesting the chrome strips that we saw on the side earlier continue down to the back and go through rear lights and make this L shape at the on the rear lights. I think it gives completeness and a good flow with the rest of the design of the car. As we go towards the center, you see the large Opel logo on this very large central strip of the hatch. This is the automatic tailgate, so there's a button over here to lift the hatch. There's also the the camera for the park assist. And as we go further down, the bumper has, again, parking sensors over here, and it's just a black bumper at the bottom, and there are no fake exhausts or real exhausts. You can't really see the exhaust tips at all. They're all the way down there. But now let's take a look at the other car. This is the sporty car that we have, and this also has the same rear spoiler, so nothing really different, and the same elements on the side, as well as this chrome strip that I was telling you about. And up till here, it's all pretty much the same as well. But we also have the turbo 4x4 badging, because this has the all-wheel drive system. I'll talk more about that inside. I'll show you the actual component that they use. And as we go down here, here is where the difference is more evident compared to the previous car that we saw. And this is where a lot of you guys are going to be unhappy because, well, take a guess. Do you think these are real exhausts? Put it down in the comments. I'll wait for you. Made a guess? Well, unfortunately, these are fake exhausts. There's nothing behind them, they're just plastic, even the one on that side. And the actual exhausts are twin exhausts, and they're both on either side, but they kind of are behind this and are pointing downwards. Now, a lot of people ask why this happens, and I have a theory, and I'm pretty sure it's true. I'll check on that if I can. I'll talk to one of the PR guys here at this event. But what I feel is one of the reasons why is, first of all, it looks better. They don't really have to invest in making expensive, shiny, chrome-tipped exhausts or anything like that. Just put that plastic and most people will be happy. And another thing is, I think for insurance purposes, in case of a rear end collision, you know, if you have the actual exhaust tips coming out and jutting out all the way to the back of the car, most of the modern exhausts, because they're so complex and with the catalytic converter as well, they're all one large unit. So if that gets damaged, you kind of have to end up replacing the entire unit itself. Whereas if it's just this, if there's some mild damage and a rear end collision, then you can just replace this bottom part. This is a different piece altogether, and it saves you so much of money, saves the insurance company a lot of money as well. Maybe I'm true. If you know, put it down in the comments below. So I'm here with Mr. Sven Weinfurtner, the assistant chief designer at the Opel
Design Center.
Okay, so he's going to walk us through some of the key elements and the key changes which separate the new Insignia Sports Tourer as compared to the regular Grand Sport sedan version.
That's true. And now let's start. I think the goal, what we want to achieve with that car here, especially with the station wagon, is really to keep the flavor of the show car Monza from 2013, which we have revealed in Frankfurt, because that car in Frankfurt really shows the athletic, premium, outstanding design together with our credo sculptural artistry meets German precision. And that brings me to the front end. I think the first thing you will notice is the bold upright grille, which turns almost back on itself and gives the car that really shark nose appeal. The whole grille has a really landscape layout, and together with the really thin executed tail lamps gives the car a really wide looking feel, a really proud stand. I want to touch a little bit on the front lamp. Here we see our top of the line headlamp, the full matrix LED headlamp, which we have revealed in the Astra, but here in a totally different way, so next level, in order to really play up the German precision, this high-tech look of the double wing execution with the indicator, and for sure the main element, the dual matrix LED. And one thing, in order to get again back to the Monza show car, are the treatments of the surfacing. So we really have precise thin lines, well executed and nicely surfaced. But in order to point out the big difference between the Grand Sport, which is a coupe-ish 5-door, I want to come to the body side of the Sports Tourer here. Also one big link back to the Monza show car is the flying roof rail. This was one key element of the show car, the chromish roof rail, which runs above the window graphic and really cuts through the C-pillar and ends in this three-dimensional shape of the tail lamp. This is not a design feature only. We are also using this in order to break up the mass of the car, because the goal was really to achieve a load master, a really load king. And we are talking about 1,605 liters capacity trunk volume. But from the outside, it still looks sporty, athletic and dynamic. And that was a reason why we have chosen that feature from the Monza show car, to really trick the eye down to the road, push the car onto the wheels without violating the interior roominess. And in addition, we put on this chrome roof rail to stretch the car even more. And as I said, all the other lines really flying across the body side, nicely sculptured. Again, this sculptural artistry meets German precision, precise, well-shaped body panels. We also added, as on all of our cars, this Opel hook, so this flying kick, which again presses a lot of forces onto the rear wheel and gives this athletic, sporty and dynamic look to the car. As we're on the rear, again, this three-dimensional shape of the lamp, which we also have shown in the Monza show car, where this really chrome blade cuts nicely through it. But in general, also to play up the premium look, we cleaned out the tailgate, just some simple lines to get this premium appeal to the car. But let's open the tailgate. Yes, talking is one thing. As I said, we are talking from 560 up to 1,665 liters trunk volume. So it's really a load master. And compared to the current Insignia, we significantly reduced the loading distance and we have a wider load through. And for sure, we have electric folding rear seats for easy access. And what you can see here with the roof rails, totally parallel in the car, so whatever fits in the back, you can slide through the whole of the car. That would be from my side in terms of design and features of the car.
Well, I have one question, which I'm sure a lot of the viewers also would like to know. And that is a topic that we have been discussing on our channel quite frequently nowadays. And that is the use of these fake exhaust tips. Now, I know that it looks nice, and for perhaps the majority of the consumers, it's not really a big deal for them because they don't really care. It looks nice, and that's most important. But is there some other reasons? Like perhaps I was thinking in case of a rear end collision for insurance purposes as well, because the actual tailpipe is not all the way back here. It's perhaps easier to manage, easier to replace, and is cheaper to fix. Is that one of the reasons as well, or what's the
That's
logic
for
behind
sure, but
this?
in general, it's really a design statement. We said, okay, with a load master, we have a big trunk volume, but the car should be really dynamic, agile, athletic. And in order to play up that sportiness, we said, okay, let's put on the big exhaust pipes to really show the power, the sportiness of the car.
Okay, well, there you have it. You heard it from the designer himself. So let us know, what do you think about this car? Put your comments in the section below. Now let's take a look under the hood. By the way, this color is called Pull Me Over Red. And, well, that might just happen because this is a big engine. Anyway, the Insignia comes with a range of 1.5 or 2-liter petrol engines, as well as a 2-liter diesel engine. It starts off with a 1.5 4-cylinder turbocharged Ecotec engine, which has direct injection. This engine makes 140 horsepower. You can also get it in the tune of 165 horsepower. They're both front-wheel drive with either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed torque converter autobox. And this is the top of the range 2-liter Ecotec 4-cylinder turbo petrol engine, which makes a very healthy 260 horsepower. This has a 8-speed torque converter automatic gearbox, as well as all-wheel drive. Now we'll talk more about the all-wheel drive system later on. I'll show you the actual component, which is in the back of the car, the rear differential. And the 1.5 liter engine has a claimed mileage of about 5.8 liters for 100 kilometers. But if you want something a little bit more economical, then it's better you look at the diesel engine. And here is that diesel engine. This is the 2-liter Ecotec diesel engine. It makes 170 horsepower. It's turbocharged 4 cylinders, and it goes to front wheel drive. You can get this with either a 6-speed manual or an 8-speed automatic, and even a all-wheel drive option for the 6-speed manual. This engine has a claimed mileage of about 5.3 liters for 100 kilometers. Thought we'd show you guys the actual way the 4-wheel drive system works. So as you can see, this is the rear drive module, or basically the rear drive differential. So this is the input shaft, which is connected to the propeller shaft. So the engine would be up here, and then the propeller shaft from the transaxle would come all the way from the bottom of the car and attach here. This would be rotating, and then this is connected to the differential. So of course there's a lot of sensors, as you can see. Just look at how complicated these things are. So this obviously is going to turn the differential, and on both of the sides of the differential you have a multi-plate clutch. Now this multi-plate clutch, with the sensors and all the information that it's getting, will decide when and if the rear drive has to be engaged. And when it is required, these clutches, there's one on this side, there's a clutch pack here, and a clutch pack inside this casing as well. So they will engage, and hence this drive will be transmitted through this shaft to the two driving shafts on the rear axle. Now, not only that, thanks to this being a multi-plate clutch, this also can do a little bit of torque vectoring, and torque vectoring in the true sense, a torque vectoring differential, not just brake-based torque vectoring, where in case of slippage or for better dynamics, the wheels are braked, the inside wheels are braked to slow them down. This will actually divert the torque towards either side by engaging and disengaging the clutch. This electronic module makes calculations multiple times per second, so it leads to much more better dynamics, handling, as well as grip and safety. Here we have the key, and by the way, the color of this car is called Flip Chip. I'm not really sure how this is a flip chip, but okay. Now let's take a look inside. The car is locked. This has the keyless entry, so you just have to keep the key nearby, and you can push this button and the door unlocks. The door opens really wide, and you have a very large opening as well to climb inside. Let's take a look at the door. Materials up here are actually quite nice. They're soft touch, And this is hard, but I think it adds a nice detailing to the otherwise very black panel in the door. Materials here are a bit hard, but things get better as you go further down. This is soft and padded, so is this. And there's an interesting chrome effect plastic around the switches for the windows. And as you'll see, all 4 windows are automatic up and down. There's also a very large door bin to keep water bottles as well, and the button to raise the automatic tailgate. As we go further down, you see this car has the optional Bose audio system. Sounds really cool. We've been listening to it for a little while when we were driving. The Opel badging down here. Let's hop inside and take a closer look. I really like these seats. Unfortunately, they are animal skin leather, and we here in Autogefühl, we always advocate for animal-friendly leatherette, but the structure I think is really nice. It's got a firm feeling, but it's supportive and soft as well. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's very comfortable. I'm sure on long distances it will be, it won't cause you any problems. It's fully adjustable electronically, so going forward, backwards, tilting the base up, tilting the front of the base. You can even pull out and extend the under thigh support. You can also extend and retract the lumbar support, as well as change the position of that as well. But it doesn't end there. There's also buttons over here, and you can even get a little massage if you want that. Also, the side bolstering can also be increased as well as decreased. So overall, finding a comfortable position in the seat is no problem. Also, the steering wheel can be fully adjusted, so this car is suitable for people of all sizes and all shapes. The new Insignia comes with a whole host of new options and features, including the IntelliLux LED matrix headlights, adaptive cruise control, heads-up display, the OnStar service, which you can use for in case of an emergency, or even things like booking hotels, finding car parks. It also has a 4G Wi-Fi enabled hotspot. This is called the IntelliLink infotainment system, which comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. There's wireless charging in the central console. I'll show you that later on. And even things like the FlexRide adaptive suspension, which we'll test later on. Apart from that, in terms of the interior quality and ergonomics, also the new Insignia has taken a step forward. The materials up here are soft touch and very nice. There's even a stitching effect in the middle. I don't think they really needed that, but these little details really go a long way to make the cabin feel a little bit more special. The interesting textured plastic that we saw on the door panel is also here around the central console. The air vents are also positioned really nice, so if you need them, you can point them towards your hands in case of a really hot day or a cold day, and you can point them towards towards yourself in case you want to circulate air around the cabin. The buttons also have very good tactile feel. They don't feel too tacky. Perhaps they're not as well fit and finish as perhaps say Audi, but overall you do find a little bit of hard plastic in certain places as you keep going further down, but I think you can live with that. So towards the left of the steering wheel you have the headlight switches. Best to just leave it in auto. Over here you see the settings for the heads-up display. You can raise or lower the actual position of the heads-up display, as well as change the information. So you can change it to perhaps just to give you the navigation instructions, or to give you just the speed or the radio station you're listening to. So you can personalize that. And of course, the brightness of the heads-up display can be increased or decreased. Now let's talk about the steering wheel itself. This is the base trim level, so you don't have the sporty steering wheel. This is the standard steering wheel. Has a nice grip, has nice stitching on the inside to give you better grip when you're holding it. The buttons on the left hand side are for your cruise control, so you can set, reset, speed limiter, and you can set the distance for the adaptive cruise control. Also has a seat heater, telephone and voice command buttons as well. As we go towards this side, here you have the navigation controls for the menu, as well as for the audio and the volume button. Now let's take a look at the dashboard itself. As you can see, there's a big screen in the middle. So you have a dedicated tachometer analog on the left-hand side, as well as some temperature gauge on the screen, which kind of is included within the left binnacle. And towards the right, you have the fuel gauge and the temperature gauge as well. Now, you can change the screen here like this. Let me just show you. There's two different display themes. So this is the sport theme. So you have a large speedometer in the middle. But if you want something a little bit more subtle, you can go to the touring theme. And now it's a lot more cleaner, a lot more easier to read. And of course you can have so many different functions on this as well. Your navigation, so you can get your map and your navigation commands like we've seen on the new Volkswagen as well as the Audi cars. You get that. Of course there's nothing programmed, so it's a little bit different. Your phone, you can connect your phone, audio controls, and of course information regarding your trip and things like mileage, etc. You even have the tire pressure monitors. It's not just a warning system, it actually gives you the value of the tire pressure itself. And traffic sign memory. This is the follow distance for the adaptive cruise control. And then you can also see things like what is consuming the most amount of fuel for you in this case. So right now we have the air conditioning on because it's quite warm, so that's what it's telling us. And you can see the economy trend. So you can see what you're spending a lot of your fuel on and how to cut that and try to keep improving your mileage. But I think it looks a little bit better in the sport theme. What do you think? Put your comments down below. Let's take a look at the infotainment system. So a very easy to read main menu, clock, temperature, and Wi-Fi 4G. It shows you that it's enabled. So this is a hotspot and you can connect your media devices. Audio controls, your phone. You can also pair this with Bluetooth, or you have what is called as projection. So that is basically, not that, projection, there we go. You can use this with Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. The navigation system is also fairly intelligent, easy to read. And since you have it here, as well as on your instrument cluster on the dashboard, as well as a heads-up display, you have to be really negligent to lose your way, which happens to me all the time. And settings for time and date, sport mode customization. So you have the FlexRide adaptive suspension, so you can turn it on or off, as well as the steering wheel will become heavier or lighter depending on the sport mode. And your usual Apple CarPlay, Android Auto settings, voice command settings, Wi-Fi settings. Nothing too special there. Climate control, obviously we have our own climate control buttons down below, but I don't know, if you want to use it on a touchscreen, you also can access the controls through here. So you can also customize the sport mode and touring mode. So essentially there are 3 driving modes: sport, tour, and normal. And I'll show you later on how to engage these different modes. But as you can see, this is the front wheel drive. So it changes things such as the throttle response, the suspension settings, steering wheel feel, and the gearbox in terms of how much it holds the revs in a lower gear or how quickly it shifts up. So all of these things are customized with this setting here. Text. OnStar service, which is a really cool service. You can use this to book hotels, or if in case there's an emergency. There's also a button on top over here. You can just push this, or SOS, and this will notify the authorities that you need some help. While we're up here, you can also see that there is a place to keep your sunglasses. There we go. Let's go back down. Some special applications like traffic, some shopping, and weather. Some hotkey buttons down here: hazard lights, jump to home, volume, and on off to power down the system if you don't want any distractions. Back, turn off the stability control. And down here we have the dual zone climate control. Standard buttons, automatic. This has heated seats as well as ventilated seats. So if you're cold or really warm, there's no problem. You can feel really comfortable in this car. Of course, defoggers, and you're back to the right side. And let's take a quick look at some storage spaces. So you have a slider which opens up to show you a couple beverage holders. You can put your key here as well. There's a little place for that. There is also a 12-volt power socket down there. Then over here, the buttons. So like I was telling you, when you have neither of these options selected, it's just a normal mode. But if you press this, then it goes to touring mode, where the suspension is softer, the throttle response is lower, the engine uses lower revs, holds a higher gear, steering is softer, or lighter rather, and sport mode, where pretty much everything is opposite. Sharper responses, heavier steering, and higher revs. And lane keep assist, the button to turn off and on the auto shut off, parking sensor buttons. And over here, this is the 8-speed automatic shifter. Nothing too special. Unfortunately, we don't have paddle shifters on this car, so if you want, you have to flick it to the left as usual. An electronic parking brake, which, you know, for the life of me, I can never decide if I like it or not. I don't see anything particularly useful about having this kind of a electronic parking brake as compared to a regular one, which you can just pull. And it's just one more piece of electronics which can go wrong in a car, so I don't know. This whole area has shiny, glossy black plastic. Another cubby hole over here to maybe put your wallet, things like that. And let's open up the armrest. It's very nice. It's damped. It's kind of spring loaded, so it doesn't. Well, it does kind of stay up here. Let's give it the shake test. Whoa, doesn't budge at all. So really good build quality. And this is Opel's way of having a wireless charger. So this is not like what we've seen in Volkswagen, where you just drop the phone in the front, but you actually put your phone in this slot, and that's where it charges. And if you look down here as well, there is a USB socket. And finally, if we look towards this side, we have a glove box, which is nicely damped. Not extremely large. Oops. It's quite shallow, honestly, but just about enough place to squeeze in your owner's manual. Here in the OPC line, since we have the top of the range 260 horsepower petrol engine, this is more sporty. So to showcase that, the steering wheel itself is flat bottom, and it has a different grip over here. And I think this kind of a grip is so much nicer because it makes you feel like you're driving a sports car. And also, your feet are also resting on more sporty brushed aluminum effect pedals as well. Let's take a look in the back seat. The door opens actually really wide, and the opening is also really large. Thanks to the extended wheelbase now, there's plenty of room inside. So let's hop inside. Well, as you can see, I have generous amounts of legroom. Headroom is also quite okay. This does not have the optional panoramic roof, but even with that, I can imagine that it doesn't impede too much into the headspace. I am 5'8" or 1.7 meters, and this seat is set to my driving position. The seats are fairly upright, but I wouldn't say extremely uncomfortable. They are also a little bit firm, but they have plenty of width and under thigh support as well. The doors, as you can see, also have some bins to store your water bottles. And let's see the middle seat. Well, it's not particularly raised compared to the outside two seats, but because of the armrest, and consequently, you know, the armrest always has the like plastic inserts for the cup holders and things like that, it is a bit hard, and I don't think I would be happy sitting here. Not to mention the large transmission tunnel that goes down the middle, so you would have to share your footwells with your co-passengers. But on the bright side, you have air conditioning vents, a couple USB sockets, and even seat heaters for the outside two seats. Speaking of the outside two seats, they also have ISOFIX points for child seats, and the center armrest with those hard plastic cup holders that I was telling you about. Let's pop the hatch. Here we go. There's a button down there, and this is the power tailgate, so it goes up automatically. Let's just check for safety. Yeah, it didn't try to kill me, so it passes. Push the button again, and it goes back up. This is a very large boot. Of course, it's an estate. As you can see, it's very rectangular. There's a very small loading lip, and it doesn't protrude too far. The bumper doesn't protrude too far back, so loading large items like the suitcase is fairly easy. The volume with the seats up in this configuration is 560 liters, but if you fold the seats down using these switches on either side, it goes up to 1,665 liters. And if you notice, the seats fold in a 40-60 or even a 40-20-40. So you have a lot of versatility in the configuration of the seats. You can just use a ski hatch or put one seat down or all seats down. There's even this divider, mesh divider in the middle, which you can get rid of like so. And of course, all of these things can be removed to load big, bulky items. Finally, you also have a 12-volt power socket and a LED light. Let's see what's down here. Well, you just have these clamps which you can put on these rails like so. So if you want to tie things down with them, you have 4 of them, and you don't need them, you can take them apart. And there's some nice little places to keep them over here. Below this, wait, I need to move this out of the way. Now we can see what's below the whole thing. Maybe they don't want me to get down here, that's why it's so difficult to do, but I will persist. And there we go. So this is the subwoofer for the Bose audio system, but you do have a tire puncture inflation kit, as well as some tools to lift the car and your standard emergency kit stuff. Oh, and look at this. Look what I found. There's also a small indentation with this net mesh so that you can maybe drop in a first aid kit or some smaller items that don't move around. So all in all, a very usable place. What are we doing? We're driving the new Insignia. First, let's put it into reverse. And this is another reason why I don't really like all electronic parking brakes. It doesn't disengage automatically, so I have to turn it off myself. But anyway, now you can see the parking sensors and the parking camera, as well as the 360 top-down view. So, makes a lot of noises, but it helps you out in the end. Always check first. You also have blind spot detectors, so that you can always check if there's a car behind you coming in from the opposite lane. Anyway, we're starting off our drive in the city. We're here in Hamburg, the port city in the north of Germany. So first impressions. Well, honestly, I didn't know what to expect with the new Insignia. I've never driven an Insignia before, so I didn't really have a benchmark or a point of reference to compare it with. So I'm going to be giving you a very objective review on this car. In that respect, I think it's fairly impressive, because this car, you know, it's not as expensive as a 3 Series, it's not as expensive as an A4, and certainly not as expensive as a Jaguar XC or a C-Class, but it gives you fairly decent driving dynamics. It's fairly comfortable, really well insulated as well. Anyway, we'll get into more details about that later on. First of all, let's start with the seats. The seats are really comfortable. They're a little bit firm for my taste, I would say, but the plus side of it being a little bit firm is that it's a lot more comfortable and supportive on longer distances. It has a lot of adjustments, so you can find a very comfortable seating position. Even things like side bolstering can be adjusted. And not to mention the massaging function. Perhaps I'm gonna turn it on right now. Ooh, feels fun. But of course, I generally don't like that when I'm driving. It's a bit distracting. Anyway, the other point, which is also very good about this car in terms of drivability in the city, is its visibility. Though this is a fairly large car, it is very easy to look out of. The front windshield is fairly large because it's a fairly wide car. The windows on the sides are also quite tall and large, so you can get view through the sides really easily. The rear windshield is also really large, so looking out back is also very easy. You also have a rear windshield wiper, so if there's snow or there's rain, then you can easily get rid of that in a jiffy, and you know, good visibility. Apart from that, it is a bit large, you know, and it is a full-size estate, and it's got a long wheelbase. Now, like, it's been extended over the previous version by 90 millimeters. So it is a bit cumbersome to navigate in the city, especially when you want to make a U-turn or navigate through narrow streets. You have to kind of lift the seat up and then, you know, use the sensors to aid you. And then you can manage. Of course, it's just a matter of getting used to it as well. But you definitely feel that it is large. We are on some really bumpy cobblestone streets, and it's really comfortable. It's really impressive that way. This car has the Flex Ride adaptive dampers. So you have a couple of different settings for that. Right now we're in normal mode, so it's supple and it's soft and it's very comfortable. If you put it in touring, it's even more supple and soft. The steering wheel also becomes a lot lighter, and it's easy to make quick corrections with it. The engine holds a higher gear and lower revs, so it's quiet. This being a diesel, if you really push it, you do hear it a little bit, but it's not too bad. It's a little bit on the gruffer side. It's perhaps not as smooth as the VW Group diesel engines. But another thing is that the steering wheel becomes lighter. Like I said, suspension is softer. Throttle response is also dulled, so you don't have jerky start-stop situations. You know, it's not nodding the car up and down. You can also switch to sport mode. Now, this is the 170 horsepower diesel engine, so the sport mode is not really going to be that exciting. If you want really out-and-out performance-oriented driving experience, then you should go for one of the more powerful petrol engines, or even the 260 Big Daddy. That's what I call it, the big powerful engine. We'll be driving that later on, so we can give you an idea of how that is as well. But now in the sport mode, the steering wheel instantly becomes a lot more heavier. So it gives you more weight, it gives you more heft, and it feels a lot more stable because of that extra weight. And not in the diesel, but in the big petrol engine, the exhaust sound, or the induction sound, basically the engine sound overall, is electronically piped into the cabin. Now, a lot of people will tell you that this is wrong, it's fake, but hey, you know, in an age where all car manufacturers are putting in fake exhausts, what's fake sound got to do with, you know, how is it going to make things worse? And honestly, having a little bit of engaging sporty sound will help you enjoy a sporty drive better. But we will test that out once we get into the other car as well. Besides that, this diesel has a claimed efficiency of 5.3 liters for 100 kilometers. Right now, we've just started off, so it's incredibly high. But once we were driving earlier, I did see numbers around 7-ish, which is a little bit too high, but it's very difficult to achieve these manufacturer claimed mileage readings. But I think even with a 7, it's not too bad. And of course, if you get out of the city and go into the highway, then you can expect it to go down to 6-ish. And I think 6 is a very, very respectable, decent number. Let's not forget, this car is quite heavy. It's about 1,600 kilograms. So it has a lot of heft and weight to move around with. Apart from that, these ventilated seats are also very useful, very comfortable. Oops, there's a little bit of traffic here in Hamburg. Anybody who lives in Hamburg, give us a shout out, put it down in the comments below. If you see me driving around, then you know what's happening. It's Autogefühl, AJ's in the house. But apart from that, let's see, back to the car review. The navigation system is fairly good. Unfortunately, you don't have knobs to turn to zoom in and zoom out. So I always prefer that, but the way they've gotten around this is that once you tap the screen, you have the zoom in and zoom out button, very large icons right in the bottom where you would expect them to be. So you can easily just tap and zoom in and zoom out as and when you need that. The gearbox is okay. I'm not particularly thrilled with this. This is a torque converter, so it is very smooth and gradual, but it's not that quick shifting. Even in sport mode, when you put your foot down, it takes a couple seconds for the engine to wake up and say, hey, we have to do something. And then the gearbox to say, okay, I'm listening, and then shift down, and then the turbos have to get into the whole the equation as well, and then the car starts picking up pace. So by the time all that has happened, it takes a fraction of a second, and it's not that swift. There's a lot of construction here. It seems to me that I'm kind of lost around Hamburg, but anyway, doesn't matter. I would have liked the gearbox to be a little bit quicker, and I think I can give a better judgment of that once I get into and drive the more powerful 260 horsepower petrol engine. Maybe the way they have programmed the transmission in that is a little bit different. I'm finding it hard to find things to find fault with this car, because as long as you know that this is not going to be an extremely luxurious car, an extremely fast car, an extremely fancy car, then for what it does and for the price that it offers this package at, there's not too many faults. Yes, the engine could be a little bit smoother. Yes, it could be a little bit more efficient. Yes, some of the plastics are still hard, but all in all, you know what you're getting into when you're buying an Opel or a Vauxhall. It's not trying to trick you. It's not going to disappoint you. But at the same time, I think it will delight you because it's so comfortable. It's so quiet. Very well insulated. I can't hear any of the sound that's coming from outside. And definitely this FlexRide suspension system also gives you the option to keep it completely supple, and you can barely feel anything even on bumpy cobblestone streets, and you can firm it up in the sports mode. So it has a little bit for everybody. All right, now we're in the 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged petrol engine, which has 260 horsepower. And when I say we're in, I don't mean we're in the engine. Of course, we're in the car, which has this petrol engine. Unfortunately, we can't really take this car out onto the highway or on twisty roads. We had initially planned to go on some unrestricted Autobahn areas to really test high speed, top speed, and stability and wind insulation and adaptive cruise control and lane keep assist, all that kind of stuff that we always do to have a very thorough test. But apparently there has been some accidents around the highways, and there's a lot of traffic jams all around Hamburg. So we're confined to the city limits for now, but we're going to try to make the best of it. We're going to try to do as much safe, dynamic driving in the city as possible to give you a good, thorough test and see what's what. So let's start off with the steering wheel. This being the sporty iteration, has a flat bottom and a different style grip. It's a lot more fun to hold and a lot more sharp acting. Now, I do not know whether there is a faster rack on this version, but it does feel very direct and very agile. The steering wheel also has paddle shifters, which the other version we didn't have, car didn't have. So it downshifts fairly quickly, but like the diesel engine that I was driving earlier, it's just, I mean, you know, it takes too long for the changes in the gear shift to really be that exciting. I mean, of course, I don't expect this to be like a PDK, but it takes a little bit of a time. And yes, it's a torque converter as well. It's not a dual clutch, so that's inherently going to have some delays in it. But I wished it was a little bit sharper, because in the sport mode that we're driving in, the suspension is a lot more firm. There's very little body roll, and the car really feels really well controlled, and it's really impressive that way. I'm going to sneak past this little Suzuki Swift there. I hope he doesn't mind. There we go. But yeah, shifting, not its strongest point. But throttle response is pretty good. The engine does sound pretty loud on the inside, but it's, like I said when I was driving the other car, it's artificially piped in through the speakers. That's what you hear. So on the outside, it's not necessarily a loud car, but in sport mode, there is some artificial sound piping that comes in. But steering and sound are, I think, the two most important elements to make a car engaging and fun to drive. It has to feel really good in the steering wheel, it has to feel very connected to the road, and you have to feel all the changes in the undulations. And this car does provide that fairly well. And the sound, yes, it's artificial, but you know what? It's not too bad. So it does overall improve the experience. And the heads-up display, which I forgot to mention while driving the other car, is also very useful. I'm a big fan of heads-up displays, and this is the full heads-up display. It's not like that pseudo heads-up display where there's another piece of plexiglass or whatever which pops up and the image is projected onto that. No, here it's projected onto the windshield and in full glory. And it's very easy to read. You have some buttons on the left-hand side where you can adjust the height of the heads-up display. You can change it to different information. So right now I have my navigation instructions on the way to the airport that we're heading back to. I could change it to a speed and navigation instruction. I can change it to just speed and the tachometer. So there's a lot of different options that you have, including some audio information as well. Yeah, but driving this car in the city, as you can see, I have to keep craning my neck around. Visibility is not bad, but it's a little bit of a larger car. I mean, again, in this segment, cars are this large, so it's nothing extravagantly larger, but the extra wheelbase, yeah, it's a little bit tricky to handle. Unfortunately, I also haven't had a chance to really experience the torque vectoring four-wheel drive system in this car, so we're gonna have to take their word for it. And you know, I think it on paper at least, the technology sounds legit and sounds useful. So I'm sure there's no reason for us to feel that it doesn't work well. And yes, this car also has adaptive cruise control. So there is a sensor or a couple of sensors, because there's some cameras, as well as the radar sensor, which will measure the distance to the obstacles in the cars in front. It can even detect pedestrians and has pedestrian safety and automatic city emergency braking. So if there's obstacles or cars in the front and you don't notice them, it brakes automatically. You can set the distance that you want to adjust with this button over here, near, far, or medium. So it will automatically brake depending on the setting. And of course the usual speed limiter as well. Overall, I would recommend perhaps the diesel engine if you're looking for best mileage, but the 1.5 Ecotec petrol engines with either 140 or 165, I think will serve your needs fairly well. It has enough grunt to have an enjoyable drive, and it gives you fairly decent economy if you drive really well and with a light foot. And because it's a petrol engine, it's a little bit more refined than the diesel that I was driving earlier. Perhaps it's just my taste, but that diesel seemed a little bit gruff. So this is a much more comfortable car to drive. And even in this, the sporty variant, if I put it in touring mode, the steering wheel again is very light. The suspension is very soft. The throttle response is dulled, so you don't have any jerky movements. It's very smooth and gradual. So even this car can become a very tame and soft, it can, attain this soft and gentle personality as well. Because I think even though the 2-liter engine, 260 horsepower sounds really cool on paper, I haven't been able to test it, but I think this gearbox lets it down a little bit. If it's one thing that I want to complain about, I think I found it, and I think it's the gearbox. This 8-speed automatic doesn't seem to make up its mind that well. I would have maybe liked the automatic, but this engine doesn't come with an automatic option, at least not here in Germany. So you have to get it with the 8-speed automatic and the all-wheel drive. An all-wheel drive I think you should definitely take, but I wish I had a 6-speed manual option so I could really get the best out of this otherwise sprightly and enjoyable engine to drive. So I think that's all the time we have today. I'm really sorry that I can't take this car out onto the highway and really stretch its legs out or take it on some winding country roads and see how the suspension handles, but take it from me, from what I've been driving so far, it does it pretty well. And again, you shouldn't expect this car to be as great dynamically as the BMW 3 Series, or perhaps have the best materials as an Audi A4, but in its price range with its competitors like the Škoda Superb or the... Can you hear that? Parking sensors. Let's turn that off for a second. Let me finish. So compared to its rivals like the Škoda Superb or the VW Passat, it's right up there, and it's definitely worth considering if you're in a market for such a type of car. The Opel or Vauxhall Insignia Sport Tourer starts at around 27,000 euros. But depending on the engine and the transmission and the options that you get, it can go upwards of even 44,000 euros. And that's not including this fabulous boat in the price. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with this car. It has a lot of safety features like blind spot monitoring, lane keeping assist, adaptive cruise control, front assist, emergency braking, things like that. If you're looking for something a little bit more dynamic, there's also the 260 horsepower engine with a really nice torque vectoring 4-wheel drive system. So overall, for this price, the small things that you have to forego, like fabulous plastics all around the place, yeah, you're not going to get it here. But the truth is, if you don't really need that, then for this price point, the Opel Insignia definitely offers a really good value for money. So let us know what you think and put your comments in the section below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Join us on Facebook and Instagram, and of course, if you haven't heard already, make sure you register for the first ever Autogefühl fan meeting that we're having at Wolfsburg. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're going to get to meet all of us, you're going to get to drive some nice cars, and check out the all-new Polo as well. Don't miss out. Registrations are still open. Click on the link below and make sure you don't miss out.